All right. Good morning, everybody. It's Dr. Karen, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about screen time and morning routines for kids. So, this is relevant, I would say, um, if you've got a child who is old enough that they have a phone. Now, obviously, nowadays, kids are getting phones and devices younger and younger. So obviously this video, if I would have recorded it 5 to 10 years ago, that age range would be a lot different. But we're probably talking about early and elementary all the way up through high school. So I was watching a video with my family last night that I thought was really interesting and helpful about morning routines and screen time. And I've also encountered some really interesting discussions about screen time and whether it's as bad as we think it is. So I wanted to share a couple of those things today. So if you're a parent who's trying to figure out how to navigate all of that, especially this year, since we've all had a lot more screen time than we would have preferred because of the pandemic, then I wanted to just share some of those things with you. So the first thing to consider that I was really looking into is just the neurological impact of screen time. So, obviously, I have said before, if you've listened to any of my other videos, that if you're on a screen all the time, it can do a lot of things neurologically that can be an issue. So, it can kind of train you to be distracted because there's all kinds of different things going on at a time. There's a lot of different um, things that require your brain to have to look over here and look over here. So because there's a lot of different distractions, you might be in the middle of one thing and then you get distracted and look at another thing. And so it kind of trains you to be multitasking or to kind of expect to jump from one thing to another. And the problem with that, obviously, is that you take that pattern over to other activities. So if you're trying to, let's say, read or do homework or do any task that requires sustained focus. So this could be something like cleaning something up, building something, anything that requires you to have to sit and engage with something without jumping to something else. This could even be something as simple as having a conversation. How many times today or these days do we see people who are talking to someone but not really paying attention, or listening to someone but not really hearing and not really understanding and not really engaging with them? So I knew all of those things before watching this video, but the interesting thing that they pointed out is that it's not just about doing this during the day. It's really about how doing what you do that first hour of your morning really sets you up for the rest of the day. Now, are there successful people who probably wake up and grab their phone and scroll Instagram for, the first 20 minutes of their day? Sure. But if you are someone, or if you have a child who is working on executive functioning and you know that you have a tendency to get distracted, that might not be the best thing that that you should do the very first hour. So what the recommendation is that for that first hour of the day, there is no screen time, there's no looking at your phone or a device. And because of this, it's not just that all of those things that I mentioned, that it kind of trains you to be reactive and responding to messages, or that it trains you to be distracted and looking at multiple things at once. It's not just that, it's just that, yes, over time, if you have a lot of screen time during your day, then you do tend to learn to get distracted, but then also it can kind of set the tone for the rest of your day. So if you have something that you need to do later in the day that requires you to sustain focus and attention, but you started your day with, looking at all your notifications on your phone, you've kind of just primed yourself to do the exact opposite of what you wanted to do. So it's not just about the cumulative effect over time, it's also about how it impacts you during that day. So this means that, if you do have some days where your schedule is a little bit more lax, that first hour of the day, if you have something important to do that day, then you want to be mindful of how you spend that first hour. So for an adult, this could obviously be that first hour before you're going to work or getting ready for your day. And for a child, that would be getting ready for school. Or even let's say that it's the weekend and they have some kind of important extracurricular event. Maybe they are in some kind of a tournament for a sport, or maybe they play chess or something like that. So we want to just be aware of how that first hour of the day primes you for the rest of the day. Now, the other question that has come up is, all right, what if I know me personally, I have a Google Doc that has all of my stuff that I need to do every day. And usually I like to plan 1 to 2 weeks out. So it's like Monday, February 22nd, I'm going to do these things. February 23rd, these are the things I'm going to do. And so I have all of that laid out. So I like to look at it first thing in the morning. But then what happens is I've grabbed my phone and I'm on my phone and it's like, oh, let me check Facebook for 20 minutes and check my email, but then not respond to people because I'm on my phone, and it gets me distracted. So what the suggestion is that instead of doing something that requires your phone first thing in the morning, you write things down. So what I am going to start to do for myself is that instead of looking at my to-do list on my phone, I am going to write my big rocks for the day. So my big important things for the day, I'm going to write them down before I go to bed the night before. Today I just did it on a Post-it note, but you can do it on a piece of notebook paper, a dry erase board, or whatever. Write those things down. Those are my top 3 things that I want to get done today. And that way I can get started on at least 1 or 2 of them, and I can get at least 1 or 2 of those things done before I even look at my phone. So I can get a good hour in before I even need to look at the phone. And what we are also, we watched this as a family and discussed it, and my stepdaughter decided that she was going to do it as well. And she has a little dry erase board that just has a to-do list. So she's going to do that. So that's how we're doing it with her. It's really similar, whether it's an adult or a child, especially if you've got a child who is, teenage or adult. You can definitely implement some of these strategies with them. And honestly, if you have a younger child, you can do it as well. You obviously want to make it age appropriate. If you have a child who is learning to read, maybe their reading isn't something that's a strength for them, what I would recommend doing is in addition to words on their to-do list, you definitely want to write the word down, because if you have a child who is working on reading, then you want to give them as much print exposure as possible, but also you maybe have a little picture that shows what they're going to do. So, some people like to print little pictures out online and, have little laminated things. My teacher friends like to do that. But if you want to do that, that's cool. But I always like to keep it simple. So what I would do is that I would probably just write the word on the dry erase board. That's my first thing that I'm going to do. And then draw a little picture next to it. And hopefully that picture is something that the child can use to help them remember what that first thing is that they can do. So especially if you let them do it. That's how I would do it, because that to me is simpler than having to find an actual picture, but you can do it however you want. So that way you've got something that you can get started on. And so the goal is that when you first wake up, you're going to look at that list and do a couple things, or at least one of those things, before you even look at a device for the day. And for me, there might be, there's things that I do every day, so I don't necessarily have to put them on my list. For your child, if you have things that they already do without needing reminders, then what you can do is that you don't necessarily have to do those things. You don't necessarily have to put those things on the list. If they already remember to get up and get dressed or go downstairs and get breakfast, well, then that's already in the routines. You don't have to write that down. The things that you want to write down are the things that where you need that extra accountability and that extra reminder. And once those things become automatic to where you don't necessarily have to think about them anymore, you can maybe take that thing off the list and not put that on your to-do list for the day and move on to something else. Work on building another habit. Now, the last thing I wanted to wrap up with is that, yes, there are all these issues with, starting the day with screen time or ending the day with screen time. That's a whole separate conversation. Or just having too much mindless screen time without actual human interaction or time that's not purposeful. There's a ton of issue with that. But in one of my speech pathology groups this past week or so, somebody brought up the thought of, is it really as always bad? Is screen time always something that is a bad thing? Of course not. It's not always bad. There are some apps that are educational. Right now I'm working on learning Spanish, so I'm on my phone doing my language learning app. That's something purposeful that I want to do. And for kids, there are a lot of those, might not necessarily be on their phone, but those gaming communities. And yes, if it's kind of an addiction and they don't want to do anything else and they don't have actual real life friendships, then that's problematic. But if they are engaging, if they are enjoying themselves, if they are using language and strategy and using different things that require them to engage cognitively, then of course there can be some benefits to that. The person in the particular group that I was in brought up, wow, like, I'm just really impressed with the language that these kids are using as they interact with each other. So is it really bad all the time? Of course not. You just want to be mindful of when you're doing it, how you're doing it, and how often. And is it something that's an obsession where they kind of just zone out and can't do anything else and get really upset when they have to put it down? Well, then you might want to look at controlling it and maybe encouraging your child to branch out a little bit. But if it's just, something that they enjoy doing and they have all these other things, like they have real life friendships and they're getting the things done that they need to do, they're able to focus for the tasks that they need to do, then it's less of a problem. I have had parents who have said that for certain things, they had to completely go cold turkey with it because their child was not able to put it down, and it was too much for them. And it was like, if it was a possibility that they were going to get to do it, they perseverated on it. And in those situations, it might be good to completely eliminate it and then maybe work it back in later and see if they can tolerate it. If it's like that, then yes, it is good to completely eliminate whatever the activity is. But if they can handle it in small doses and if they're willing to branch out to other things, then that's a different story. Now, it does get pretty challenging now because of the pandemic, and if you want to interact with someone, a lot of times it does have to be online. So it's the same thing where if you're obviously having a Zoom conversation with your grandma, that's different than playing some game and just zoning out and not talking to anybody. Obviously, that's different now. Hopefully, within the next year, we're going to get to the point where we are able to see people more. We're able to open up a little bit and expand what we're able to do as far as real life relationships. But what you can do now is, things that we have done is that instead of watching TV or being on a device, we'll play a game or play Scrabble or charades or something, do something that doesn't involve a device, and make sure that when we are using our phones, it is to talk to people and have quality conversations and not just, not just playing on our phones and scrolling Instagram. So those are my suggestions and my thoughts on screen time and morning routines. Again, that first hour of the day can be really important if your child is someone who tends to kind of spiral once they get down the wrong path. So that would be something to try if you're working on that, if you're working on attention and focus, is to really pay attention that first hour of the day. So thanks so much for watching and have a good one.